Welcome everyone to How to Prepare for Economic Uncertainty with Conversion Rate Optimization. We are thrilled to share some great content with you today from one of our CRO experts. So first, we're just going to jump into a few logistics. The session recordings and slides will be sent to your email by end of day in case you want to go back and watch or just share with your colleagues. Also, within the next hour, you can log back in at any time using the link that was in your inbox or that was in your calendar hold. And then to download our handouts today in the panel to the top right of your screen, you will see some of our recently released reports that you can download directly from there. Also, as you are joining our chat, please let us know where you are tuning in from. Looks like we have everyone from Toronto to California, so welcome everyone. Keep plugging that in there. You can also submit questions in the chat as well. We will aim to answer those during our Q&A session at the end. Finally, we have 2 poll questions that are live, so make sure to join in via the poll tab on the right-hand side of the dashboard if you go from chat to polls, including one that you can let us know if you want to talk to our teams after about how we can help you make the most of your CRO strategy. And I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Catherine Bishop, Marketing Coordinator at Tenuity, and I will be hosting our webinar today. And just a little bit about Tenuity. We have mastered the media that matters most. We are the largest independent performance marketing firm across streaming TV and the triopoly of Google, Facebook, and Amazon. At Tenuity, we understand that success requires both strategy and channel specialization. That approach wins us awards and recognitions across the industry, such as the American Business Stevie Awards and the Shorty Awards, and allows us to help grow some amazing clients like those you see here. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Kendall to introduce herself.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Catherine. Hello, everyone. As Catherine mentioned, my name is Kendall Giglio, and I am the Vice President of Web Solutions here at Tenuity. And I'm really looking forward to our time together today. And my hope is the content will not only be informative, but it will be applicable to your marketing efforts. And there will be some good takeaways that you're able to bring back to your business to experience some positive impact. So we have quite a few things to cover in our time today, and everything we're going to be discussing centers around leveraging CRO to navigate economic uncertainty. So we're all aware of the current standing of the economy and how it may be impacting both your business and your marketing efforts. So today we're going to start with a quick overview of the changing landscape, and then we're going to dive into 3 specific areas of focus. And those areas are outlined here: landing, engaging, and converting. But before we do that, I'm going to toss it back over to Catherine for our icebreaker poll.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kendall. So we're so excited to have you here today. But before we dive in, we want to know from our audience, if money and resources were no object, how would you choose to leverage CRO? So this poll is live right now in the upper right-hand corner if you click on polls. So are you going to go big or go home? You just want to redesign your entire site? Do you want to know all the things, do some research analysis and audit for key learnings, or testing for the win? Do you just want to test, and then some more testing? Or are you going to be the big spender? If you have the money, then you want to just do all of the above and then some. So please answer that in our poll. That is, if you just toggle over from chat to poll, you can answer that. Looks like most people are saying big spender. So, I mean, if I agree, if you've got the money, you might as well just do it all. So I think that's awesome. Yeah, it looks like it's where most people are coming in there. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Kendall, and I'll go off screen. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Great. So thanks to everyone who participated in our poll. And without further ado, we are going to jump in, and we're going to start with the changing landscape. And I think the most important thing for this section is to keep in mind that it's less about how the landscape has changed, but more about what this change means for moving forward for us. So these next couple of slides are coming from Tenuity's Google Ads and Facebook benchmark reports, and they're based on anonymized performance data from Google and Meta programs under Tenuity's management. So first off, for Google, we can see within Google, there was a 15% growth in spend year over year in Q3, but ultimately that is down from 18% growth in Q2 and 23% growth in Q1. And if we are spending less to drive traffic to our sites, we have to place even more importance on converting the traffic that's coming in. Within the Meta properties, we see a slight decline in advertiser spend year over year. And it's important to call out here that while 1% certainly doesn't seem like a massive drop, in Q2 really was the first quarter of negative growth ever observed across Tenuity's advertisers. So I think it is important to note for that specific case. On the retail side specifically, sales generated were up 14% year over year, but orders were up by just 6%, with half of retailers seeing flat or declining order volume with any sales gains driven by higher order value alone. So inflationary pressures likely helped drive up average order value, which increased by about 8% year over year. Retail businesses still fight a variety of battles. If you're on this webinar and from the retail side, this is something that's understandable for you. And one of them continues to be inventory. For some, supply chain issues remain a struggle, while some brands are currently facing a glut of inventory, particularly in the apparel and footwear categories. So in an effort to clear this inventory, many brands have turned to larger discounts. And as a result, Google search advertisers in the apparel category saw an average order rise of just 2% in Q3 of this year. So the holidays are right around the corner, and I really don't even know how we're already towards the end of October, but we have to take into account how customers are viewing the upcoming shopping season. So data from Tenuity's 2022 Holiday Shopper Study, which if you haven't checked it out, it's a study in which over 1,000 holiday shoppers were surveyed by Tenuity, shows that 50% of respondents, when asked how they expected product price inflation to impact their holiday shopping this year, responded with, "I will shop around more." So what does this mean for your customer? Well, ultimately, it means the likelihood is higher that their motivation, particularly their motivation to purchase quickly with the first brand they engage with, will be much lower, as will the urgency to make the purchase itself. So based on this, what does it mean for retail business? It means that the need is stronger than ever to increase perceived brand credibility and value. And so if we can tip the scale in favor of both of these determining factors, the likelihood of traffic leaving to explore other sites to both purchase can be decreased. And we want to get them to stay so they purchase with you. On this next slide, and remaining on the holiday shopping subject, so we asked how pandemic era inventory and shipping issues have affected shoppers' plans for the holiday season. And while respondents were able to select multiple choices, buying from websites that they trust more to fulfill their order in a timely fashion took 39% of the votes. So what does this mean for your customers? It means that there is an increased anxiety and hesitancy, and they're both detrimental to the momentum necessary for conversion within your visitors when shopping. And what this means for your business, it means that increased transparency around shipping times and inventory availability, coupled with the appropriately positioned incentives, can have a significant impact on sales this holiday season. So, armed with all of the information that we just reviewed, we have to stop and ask ourselves, now what? How does the information pertain to conversion rate optimization, and where do we begin? And that question will lead us to the first section we're going to cover. And that section we've categorized as landing. And this is where your visitors find themselves upon click-through. So where we create the first impressions that cause and result in visitors staying on page and on site. And this is accomplished through landing page relevancy and designated landing pages. Now, I know landing page relevancy seems like a very elementary, obvious concept, and this may in fact be the part of the webinar where you think to yourself, this is pretty dang basic, but hear me out. It is included here because we have seen it be on an ongoing basis an issue, and the most simple of improvements can lead to the most significant impact. So I think it's important to note here that the littlest things matter in the world of CRO. The smallest change, overlooking a single element, can really make all the difference. So when it comes to visitors arriving to your site, one of the primary things we have to do is match the query. So we'll use Hunter rain boots as our example. We're searching for non-gender specific rain boots, and we land here. So checking out this screenshot of the page, do you see what the problem is? My search query wasn't women's rain boots, and yet here I am. Now, if I was shopping for myself, this wouldn't be a problem, but if I'm shopping for my husband or my kids, more generic search, right away, out of the gate, we have a problem. Nowhere on the ad does it say women. So right away, within seconds of a visitor arriving to the site, we've missed the mark. If the visitor is highly motivated, they'll dig for men or kid products, they'll further engage with the site. But why are we even making that necessary? If they are searching for non-gender specific rain boots, land them on all rain boots, regardless of gender. So as you can see here, such a page does exist on the Hunter site, and we can see that the experience changes immediately. The query is matched, Hunter rain boots. There's a clear path for further engagement with individual selections for shopping women, men, and kids. Prime example of matching that query. One important factor upon click-through is being certain that the intended motivation of your ads is clearly and obviously identifiable. So on the left, we have a Facebook ad touting Little Spoon's 50% off fall sale. And upon click-through, our iQuant snapshot, and we'll touch on iQuant a little bit later in the webinar, can confirm the fall sale messaging is in fact within the perception maps hotspot. And as a result, this means it will be visually identified within the first 3 seconds of arriving on the page. So this would be a good time to ask ourselves, if your site was plugged into a tool such as iQuant, would it stand up and have its specific areas of influence visible? From a marketer's perspective, the fun part of ads is you don't really know what exactly causes the visitor to click through. If it's the copy, what specifically about the copy? If it's the imagery, as we can see here with the Facebook ad for Little Spoon, what about that imagery? It all plays together. So as we can see from this ad to lander experience, the fall sale messaging is mapped over and prominently displayed, which we touched on in the previous slide. But now if the visitor if their entire motivation hinges on interest in the sale, it's smooth sailing upon landing. But if that sale is coupled with the chicken pot sticker with brown rice quinoa imagery recipe, and the visitor is greeted with a visual of chicken nuggets and peas, you got to pump the brakes. We have a problem. Be specific. If it is in your ad, it should be on the page. It's that simple. Users shouldn't have to locate why they clicked through, nor should you fail to remind them why they clicked through. Don't create, intentionally or not, a need you won't be addressing upon click-through. If the sale didn't hook them, the recipe might have, and we automatically have a disconnect there. Don't hook users with something you aren't willing to follow through with, like pot stickers versus chicken nuggets, for example. This next one seems pretty obvious as well, but you'd be shocked by how many times my team, our CRO team, has encountered the example you're seeing right here, which is maintaining the intent. And it's paramount to the relevancy necessary for conversion. So considering that we know that a huge portion of shopping research is done on mobile, abandonment rates can definitely be higher. So 15% off rain boots for my kids in this ad, count me in. I click through, only to be greeted with nothing that looks like rain boots. And are they on this page? Yes. Do I have to scroll a while to find them? Also, yes. So from a consumer standpoint, if I wasn't intentionally seeking out rain boots, but rather just attracted to this ad while scrolling my feed, the likelihood of me bouncing the minute my expectations are violated are almost guaranteed. So we want to, and then to make matters even worse, your 15% off incentive loses its value when the initial reason, rain boots, the visitor clicked through, is no longer at the forefront. So an example, and wrapping all of this up in terms of relevancy, we have here a lead gen client example. And a common mistake that my team encounters quite frequently is a one-page fits all page. So what that means for us is all traffic is being sent to a somewhat generic page. And then the problem with this is that not all traffic is created equal. So ultimately, why should the page be? We ran this specific test for a B2B software company in which we decided that we would like to redirect brand traffic to a page that spoke more directly to our client's brand versus a specific product. So the client had the landing page that you see on the right in use, but with very minimal traffic being driven to it. So we proceeded to test sending half of the brand traffic to the page on the left and the other half to the leader 4 years running landing page on the right, because we felt that touting brand credibility with the Gartner report in which our client was recognized as a leader in the space would ultimately be better suited for branded traffic. And the result, within about 4 weeks, we saw a 108% increase in leads for this client. So specifically just by that small change, redirecting that traffic and testing it out, within 4 weeks, we saw that lift. And of course, we can't speak to landing page relevancy without addressing the homepage. So because so many of us use it as a primary lander. And so it's important to note that your homepage really serves two primary purposes. So the first one is clearly establishing your unique value proposition, why visitors should engage with you versus your competition. So if customers are planning on shopping around more this holiday season, as we saw from our Shoptinuity Shopper's Guide, you have to give them a clear reason to stay or a clear reason to return should they in fact end up venturing elsewhere. So it is important to note your value proposition should be unique to you. No one else should be able to claim it. And if they can, then it's really not your unique value proposition. But more importantly, visitors should be able to clearly identify it quickly upon landing, setting the stage for further engagement and ultimately conversion. And then the second primary purpose of your landing page is to act as the gateway to get visitors where they need to get as quickly as possible and as seamlessly as possible. So if you are currently using your homepage for a catch-all for incoming traffic, you really better hope that visitors can clearly get where they need to go, be that a specific product or area of the site. An over-cluttered homepage will really inundate the visitor with choices that ultimately create so much noise they forget why they came in the first place or ultimately choose to abandon altogether. So clearly establishing your value proposition while allowing those visitors to get where they need to get as quickly as possible will set your homepage up for optimal engagement opportunities. And the more engaged your visitor is, the more likely they venture deeper into your site and into conversion. So as we wrap up the landing section, it is important that everyone understand what your options are to improve relevancy on your landing pages. So first, you can simply double down on your QA process. QA it. Cross-reference your ads against your current landing pages. I know it sounds simple, but double down the efforts. You really want to be able to identify and avoid any glaring relevancy issues, and they can be as simple as the Hunter example, general landing page for rain boots. Instead, it was a women's landing page for rain boots. Your second option is to review your current landing pages and determine if there are other pages within your site that are better suited and aligned with the traffic being driven to them, similar to that lead gen example. And we sent them to a totally different page that already existed in order to increase that relevancy as well as credibility. A redirect can quickly rectify an issue that is harming both the consumer's experience as well as your bottom line. And then the final option is to employ a landing page builder tool to build brand new pages without the necessity of development resources. And landing page builders allow you to easily and quickly set up, design, duplicate at scale. And if managing more landing pages is a hurdle that's giving you a little bit of hesitation, landing page builders like Instapage, for example, allow you to make global changes to your pages that keep landing page maintenance to a minimum. So keep in mind, you can most certainly start small. You don't need 50 landing pages. I know that can seem overwhelming for some of the smaller companies with more limited resources, but you do need to be able to cater to the proper experience. And so this is a great place to start. So next up, we move from landing to engaging. And this is the point where your visitor has chosen to remain, but we know that the work, once they choose to remain, is far from over. So what has become pivotal now is establishing the momentum through trust, value for a solid user experience. So in this next section, we'll speak to the credibility and transparency, as well as the impact and importance of both sales and incentives as we venture deeper into Q4. So starting with a good quote, I love a good quote. And Flint McLaughlin over at Mech Labs delivers with a quote from his book, The Marketer as Philosopher. And his quote is that the marketer must make value visual, the marketer must make value perceived, and the marketer must make value believed. And I love this quote because the importance of a quote like this is the reminder that it's not just about how we convey value, but how we ensure that the value is both perceived and believed by the visitor. Because no matter how we convey it, if it's not both perceived and believed, we're missing the mark. So we roll out the welcome mat, lay out some solid brand trust, and at the end of the day, your website is ultimately a vehicle to establish your credibility. So no one is eager to give their money to a site they don't trust, nor would they choose to. And people don't buy from websites. People ultimately psychologically buy from people, and no one wants to buy products they don't trust or that others themselves ultimately don't trust. So a few ways that visitors are looking for your brand to establish trust is through the quality and value of your products, security when purchasing from your site, and in today's current economy, shipping and inventory. And there certainly isn't one tried and true way to establish this, but there are a variety of ways that you can test to see what works best for your visitors. And if you aren't working to establish, fine tune, and emphasize your brand's credibility during the season of uncertainty and unease, then you ultimately are missing the mark. So we're going to walk through some examples because examples really hit home real world problems that we have helped to address and seen some great impact from. So one way in particular you can establish trust and credibility with visitors, easy out the gate, is to prove that others trust and find you credible. So after reviewing heat map data on a client's product pages, we realized that less than 10% of traffic was scrolling deep enough to reach the product reviews. And these products have a lot of reviews. So we hypothesized that by bringing more reviews above the fold, we would create more trust in the product itself. Would this be enough to establish the necessary credibility and trust in both the product and the brand to ultimately increase conversion rates? Yes, it was. So upon conclusion of this test, just by moving those reviews from the bottom of the page, where only 10% of viewers or visitors were actually seeing it, we saw an 11.44% lift in conversion rate for the variation with the prominent product reviews located above the fold. So as we've now entered into Q4, due to the current economy and some brands struggle with inventory, we need to address the elephant in the room. Is it in stock? And if so, will I get it on time? As we saw from the shopper's guide, this is an issue for at least 50% of the 1,000 people surveyed by Tenuity. If there's no availability for a specific item, make sure you give the customer peace of mind in knowing other items are ready and able to ship if they are available. And transparency will be key in building the trust and encouraging both engagement and conversion. So if you want to see firsthand the difference it can make, take a look at this test that we recently ran for our client. So our awesome CRO specialist, Nicole, had hypothesized with the client that adding in stock back to the product pages for items that are shipped directly by the client will ultimately reinforce the client's main value proposition. And their value proposition is that they have the largest inventory of in-stock items. So while also adding an important piece of information that users want to know these days before purchasing, which is it in stock? And the result was a 4.77% increase in revenue and a 2.77% increase in transactions. So the takeaway for us was calling out in-stock items more explicitly is ultimately going to have more of an impact due to supply chain issues. So proving that peace of mind, reassurance before the question can even be asked, in this instance, made a very big difference. And for this same client, our specialist Nicole was back at it and tested simply changing the color of in-stock ships today. Now, for anyone on this webinar that is involved in CRO, whether in your company or you've dabbled with it on the side or you're really well versed in it, we all know that changing the color of something ultimately doesn't necessarily make that big of a difference. However, we made these changes based on what we figured the need was based on the current economy climate. So what we did was on the desktop product pages, we wanted to draw more attention to the fact that our client does in fact have in-stock products. And what we saw here was the result of a 1.86% increase to revenue, further supporting the hypothesis that calling out in-stock items directly really will have more of an impact due to supply chain issues. So next up, we have these incentives that everyone loves. And it's important to keep in mind when determining your incentive that true value is all in the perception of the visitor and what they actually find valuable at the end of the day. So our strategist, Teresa, did some great research for her client around free shipping. She discovered that free shipping itself is a very powerful motivator, right? And in some cases, people actually preferred free shipping over a percentage off discount, which in the long run would have actually saved them more money. But with all that being said, it's important to remember that it's not just about the offer. As I mentioned before, it's how you communicate that offering or incentive to the visitor. So you have free shipping. So what? Is that offer incentivizing enough on its own, or does it require you to take a step further into how you articulate it? So as Teresa discovered, the language that you use, the placement, the presentation, the tone that you set of the offer itself can make all the difference for visitors and their perception. So bring on the free shipping messaging. As you can see along the left, these are the options that appear to visitors on the client's website. So we had 3 different scenarios that the client was offering. Scenario number 1, the item was $150 or more, and the visitor immediately qualified for free shipping and encountered "You're qualified" messaging. The second scenario was free shipping, but not qualified due to the item being too large, therefore more expensive to ship. Or the third scenario was the free shipping was not qualified. They weren't qualified due to the item needing to be shipped freight. So our strategist, Teresa, was quick to point out the negative red messaging of not qualified was quite possibly creating a disappointing negative experience. And she sought to change the approach to not only how we presented the options, but how we enticed visitors to purchase more in an effort to achieve free shipping. So as you can see on the updated variations, we changed the coloring from red to green, and the messaging added a positive messaging around products that could ship for free with the right qualifying amount, which was a new option. And we moved away from the not qualified messaging to the shipping cost calculated at checkout. So the results were fun. Overall, we saw a 5% increase in transactions, but the icing on the cake was a 13% increase in revenue, as Teresa proved that we could in fact entice further purchasing through a different incentive approach. So with the holidays fast approaching, we have our retail clients will be gearing up for some great sales, which brings us to the promo code. And people are motivated to save, but the promo codes can ultimately help or hurt conversion rates. And you may be thinking, wait, people like to save money. Why would promo codes be a hindrance? But the answer is simple, right? So visitors will navigate away from your site to locate a promo elsewhere, which raises the new challenge of making sure that they return. And people are going to search for promos. You can make it easy or you can make it hard. But most importantly, if they do venture off to find one, we have to make sure they are motivated to come back. So to prove our promo code point, here's an example of a test run by one of our CRO specialists, Spencer. And Spencer hypothesized that people will hunt for a promo code if they don't already have one, especially if the promo code indicator, promo code bar, where they enter the promo code is bold. And so as a result, there would be an increase in people bouncing to find a promo code elsewhere. And if they failed to find it, they could easily get distracted, not returning to complete the purchase. So Spencer decreased slightly the promo code box, so it was still easily identifiable, but not as prominent. And the result was a 3% increase in transactions. So now we enter into the final section, which is converting, optimizing and testing the right things at the right time. And in this section, we will touch on the checkout funnel, the micro and macro conversions, and research and execution of user behavior. So the good old checkout funnel. So for some retailers, the black hole where visitors abandon, never to return. But in all seriousness, the shopping cart and beyond continues to be, in most cases, the highest point of abandonment and drop off. So due to this, you should be doubling down on the cart, pressing into identifying areas for improvement and removal of speed bumps that hinder users. And so some of these speed bumps or things that slow down visitors, give them pause, are unnecessary distractions, required guest checkout, and upfront costs and fees. So in an effort to streamline guest checkout for a retail client, we simplified the start of the checkout funnel. We wanted to de-emphasize new account creation for sign-in and checkout, guest checkout, and with no account creation, we only wanted to have guest checkout and signing in only. And so by doing this, the results were fairly significant. We saw at the end of the day on desktop a 20% lift in transactions by just simplifying this section of the site. So who doesn't love a good micro conversion, right? So after all, it is a series of micro conversions that work together to bring a visitor to the macro conversion. So within our current economic climate, all points of interaction are significant and all should be optimized to the best of our ability. So here are a few examples of tests and their corresponding results that we ran on various micro conversion points that ultimately led to some macro lifts. So starting on the left, we had an email capture, and how we presented that opportunity really mattered by simply decreasing the reject my offer messaging and in turn enhancing the prominence of the get my 20% off incentive messaging. We saw a 13% lift in revenue. For those currently leveraging the chat feature on your site, optimization opportunities are available there as well. By simply changing our approach from welcome, let me know if you need help, to a more proactive need help, what would you like to know more about messaging, we saw a 1% lift in bookings for this resort. And then finally, for those exit pop-ups when testing their success with new traffic, those encountering the pop-up converted 12% higher than those who didn't view the incentive pop-up. And all three of these examples demonstrate the importance of all site touch points and how the smallest of details can ultimately make a big impact. So in our final client example, I also think it's one of the more interesting examples that we have, and honestly, one of the more interesting examples that our team has worked on in the past couple of months. So our CRO specialist, Mark, had executed quite a few tests for his subscription-based beverage client on their Shopify site. However, within the current economic times, the client was curious if pushing more traffic to their Amazon listing through link placement on their Shopify site would yield more sales. Now, as Mark was quick to note, the key consideration for something like this is what the product you are offering on Amazon is versus what the product offered on the site is, and taking into account the margins for said product on Amazon versus the Shopify site. So the product on Amazon was slightly different from some of the things they offered on their Shopify site, but very similar to this trial variety pack offered through their Shopify site. So using the Amazon fulfillment, they saw lower shipping costs. So ultimately an increased revenue on Amazon equated to higher product margins. So Mark tested moving the current location of the Amazon listing on the Shopify site to the top of the shop section of the site menu and the collection pages. And the result was an overall combined between Shopify and Amazon transaction increase of 20%. So it's important to note the main purpose of this test was not to cannibalize Shopify sales, but to determine how adding the Amazon listing would affect overall business revenue. Did this ultimately decrease Shopify sales? Yes, it did. Did it increase Amazon sales? Yes, it did. But for our client, when all was netted out, the new Amazon listing location on the Shopify site increased overall business revenue by 17%. So we've talked about all the different things we could be changing and all of the things we could work to improve upon or enhance. However, the greatest opportunity that we have is also one of the most simple, which is giving your visitors a voice. And why we've saved this topic until the end of the webinar, why we place research within the converting section of this presentation is simple, because this is the most straightforward result yielding information you could possess. Qualitative user behavior is some of the best data that you can accrue, and information straight from the visitor's mouth, no assumptions, no guessing, only facts. You saw the example from the client previously with the reviews brought above the fold. That was told to us by viewing scroll data from these qualitative tools. Your visitors have a voice. They will tell you exactly what they like and what they don't like about your site. But the big question for us as marketers at the end of the day is, are you willing to listen to what they have to say? You want to know where your visitors are clicking on your site? We have heat mapping. This first image. Do you want to know if the content you have located 3/4 of the way down the page is even being seen? Scroll mapping can answer that. Do you want to watch playback of visitors engaging with your site where they explore what they devote their interest to? User videos, you can watch some of those. If you want to know how visitors feel about their overall experience, why they're leaving without purchasing, or if they were even able to find what they were looking for in the first place, user polling, these final images here on the right. Do you want to ask specific questions about design, usability, functionality, overall effect of your site? User testing. There's a lot to be said by your visitors. You just have to be willing to put on your listening ears. So it's time to start making behavior-based decisions. And while quantitative data will tell you what the problem is, it won't tell you why it's a problem in the first place. So big impact changes can be the result of low lift analyses. So you can improve upon content hierarchy by understanding user scroll depth. You can discover unidentified frustration points. We refer to it as rage clicking, right? So when an element is repeatedly in a very frustrated manner clicked on, either because it's not working properly or the visitor thought it was clickable when in fact it wasn't. Time on page isn't good enough anymore. We need to know time to click, what was clicked, why it was the engagement point selected in the first place. Now, I wouldn't be so cruel as to tell you about these neat opportunities without sharing with you a few of our favorites that we leverage for our clients. So the first one is iQuant, which you saw in action earlier with the Hunter Rain Boot example. And this tool helps to identify visual hotspots on your page, leveraging AI. It allows you to better understand if elements you want to stand out are or aren't. Hotjar is all of those fun heat maps, scroll maps, user videos, quick user polling opportunities. Usability Hub is our go-to for quick preference tests, asking which do you like more, version A or version B? And the classic 5-second test, where we have visitors stare at a page for 5 seconds and then answer a series of questions after removing that page. It's really helpful in identifying if what we're trying to convey is easily understood quickly. And then finally, User Brain. This is our go-to tool for user testing. If you're deadlocked on a design decision, if you're torn between one idea and another, which to test and why, you can get answers straight from your demographic. And the answers come in almost instantaneously. So now we come to the time where we're coming to the end. We're going to wrap up with a recap. We've walked you through the 3 primary areas to help navigate today's economic uncertainty, including landing, in which we dove into landing page relevancy and the importance of designated landing pages. Then we moved over to engaging, in which we discussed the importance of credibility and transparency, sales, incentives, and saw firsthand examples of the impact these make on both revenue, conversion rates, and finally converting, where we dove into the checkout funnel and the importance of macro and micro conversions, and most importantly, that research and execution. So as we recap, here are a few key takeaways. First being that relevancy matters, making sure that your pages aren't leaving your traffic lost and unsatisfied. We clearly want to establish brand trust. If not from you, they will get it elsewhere, and it should be from you. Inventory matters. Ease anxiety up front while removing any opportunity for hesitancy. Not all incentives are created equal. Free on-time shipping is most appealing, as we saw from our testing. Stop checkout leaks. Don't neglect the area most likely to experience the highest rate of abandonment. All touch points matter. The path to conversion has multiple interactions. We should be optimizing them. And finally, put on those listening ears. If you aren't proactively listening, you're proactively losing money. And that wraps up my portion of the webinar. So thank you so much for joining, and I will toss it back over to Catherine.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kendall, for walking us through everything from landing page relevancy to research and execution. Before we jump into Q&A, we would love to be able to continue the conversation for how Tenuity can help you leverage your CRO strategy. So you can let us know via the poll that's open now in the poll tab in the right-hand corner if you want to talk to our teams further. And now, just to let everybody know, if you click on this QR code, it will take you to Kendall's LinkedIn if you would like to connect with her there. So let's get started with a couple questions. All right. So Kendall, you mentioned the homepage has 2 purposes: value proposition and usher visitors, but what if the visitor doesn't know what they want and are in more of a non-brand research phase of the customer journey?
Sure. So the homepage is definitely used, I know, in many cases for non-brand traffic and to drive customers to become familiar with the site itself. So I think what's most important from those 2 things that I mentioned were, if they are in that perusal stage, those 2 things become even more important, right? If they're wanting to peruse, they have to be able to know why your brand is the brand that they should be engaging with via that value proposition. And if they are wanting to peruse your site, they need to clearly be able to get where they want to go when they identify something. So I know that homepages can typically be a catch-all. I know that we want to throw everything and the kitchen sink on them. But at the end of the day, if the visitor is inundated with this content that we feel is important, then we're wasting that content. So we want to be very careful and still drive home the value proposition and the clear points of action that visitors want to take on the homepage.
Awesome. Thank you, Kendall. Also, how often do you analyze and leverage user behavior for testing?
Yep, good question. Every test. So every one of our clients is leveraging some sort of qualitative tool. Hotjar is our go-to, but of course, some of our clients are leveraging Lucky Orange, Crazy A, Content Square, a variety of platforms. And we don't make any testing decisions without consulting qualitative data, primarily because there's a lot of assumption sometimes in optimization. We're human, so we lean towards what we think will be best versus what the customer or the visitor user will tell us they want. And so in order to drive up the success rate of our efforts, we cross-reference everything that we do with that qualitative data.
Awesome. And I think we have time for just one more question. Why do you feel CRO is such a hard sell for some businesses?
Oh, This is always a great question. So CRO is a hard sell for some businesses. The short answer is because it is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It is an investment. And I think unlike some of our other paid media efforts where results are almost instantaneous from takeover, CRO is a psychological work in progress, right? So it's the analysis of user behavior, both that quantitative and qualitative research. It's an added expense that we pay up front with the trusting that it will pay for itself in the long run. So you saw from all of those examples of tests that even for some of our clients, 1% lift can be millions of dollars. So it's a hard buy-in at first because those results come anywhere from 30 to 90 days after the initial investment. So that's hard. I do think that CRO is on the rise, both from more agencies to in-house teams to managed services of other technology platforms that are now offering consultative services. So people are understanding the value of CRO, but it is a tough sell sometimes because the proof is in the pudding, but sometimes that pudding isn't available for a few months. But we know for a fact it is the tide that lifts all boats. It is what can ultimately guarantee success of your marketing dollars. And so we want to make sure that people are investing with it in one way or another, even if it's just leveraging one of those qualitative tools that we talked about. If you're leveraging that tool, you are doing CRO. Even if you're not testing, if you're just observing what your visitors are doing, taking note and making even the smallest of changes to align with what they're telling you via those tools, you can be in a much better spot than those who are not.
Amazing. Thank you so much for answering those questions for us, Kendall. Before we wrap up the day, I do want to call attention to Tenuity's Content Hub. So let me launch that for everybody so that you can click that link there. You can go there to register for upcoming webinars, to watch previous recordings, and you can also check out our blog and guides. So lots of great stuff there. So you can click the link that is live in the bottom left hand of your screen to get there. And I want to thank Kendall for walking us through CRO, and to our audience for being so engaged. I do want to let everyone know that once you close out of our session, you will be redirected to our feedback form. We would love to hear from you, not only about what you thought of the session today, but what you want to see going forward with topics. So please let us know using that form, and thank you all again. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.